Righto, guys, ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between. Freedom Chef here for our Paradigm Shift episode with Rob King. Rob King's a candidate in some upcoming elections in Queensland, which is, I was just asked whether or not you were in another country, which Queensland's pretty well another country these days. Mate, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, Dean. It's a pleasure to be on this broadcast right here and speaking to a lot of people who are passionate about freedom and the freedoms that, we're actually slowly losing in Australia right now. And I mean, that's really the whole reason behind why I got into politics. I never actually viewed myself as a politician. I've always had sort of more of a negative view towards them. And I guess I'm coming at it a place from being an unpolitical politician. I really want to set a new standard, a new norm, transparency. When someone asks you a question, not worming your way around it, and just not mincing your words, because I think that's what the average Australian really appreciates. So yeah, here we are,
mate. Yeah, that's great. And obviously, you've landed in the libertarian space. The LDP isn't registered up there in Queensland, but I know they've been pushing pretty hard to support you, mate. What do you do in your real regular life? What's Rob King do other than harass and upset the political class?
So I do a little bit of security work on the side, but my main focus is in my personal training and online sales marketing business. So that's where most of my energy goes. I was in the military and did a lot of fitness and combat fitness leader training in there, and that sort of transitioned me into the personal training world once I got out of the military, and I love the freedom that it gives me, being my own boss. And I mean, prior to 2020, no one could really dictate to you whether or not your business operated or not. And this is the first year in history that a government has actually stepped in and told you can't operate your business. And as a libertarian, that doesn't really sit very well with me.
No, mate, I'm with you 100%. I'm a chef by trade. I've hospitality business for a long time. So, yeah, the whole thing's pretty disgusting. And you're just watching people lose everything. It's unbelievable. As a libertarian, I had a big free market economy viewpoint, but I think COVID's shown us that it was nowhere near as free a market as we thought it was. There's clearly far more hands in there than what we, I suppose, realised or comprehended up until COVID. And then it was, sorry guys, shut your door because we said so.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I think everyone was sort of okay with the initial response that was like, okay, let's lock everything down for a few weeks and knock it over. Flatten the curve was the term back then. I haven't really heard that term being used lately. Now it's all about zero cases. And they've just set unrealistic expectations which can't be met, and therefore they're bleeding businesses dry because they can open, but they can't reach the profit margins that they need to, that they were operating prior to COVID. So it's like a slow death at the moment, which is the worst kind.
Oh, and we haven't seen them turn around and say, "Oh, well, we'll drop minimum wage to whatever suits the business." I have no doubt that if you open and you're not paying those minimum wage requirements, they'll very quickly shut you down or file complaints or how dare you. I mean, if the market was that way driven and you could turn around and say, hey, look, the business is closed, I can only give you a percentage of sales or a percentage of take, it'd almost be viable, but there's no way in the world that the government or the unions and the rest of their cronies are going to capitulate to that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to worry about the social sort of conditioning that's going on now as well, with a lot of people actually saying they don't want to go back to work because, they're enjoying their time on JobKeeper or Job Seeker, whichever it is. And they're at home playing Xbox and getting paid for it. So they're like, why would I go, slog it out in a kitchen and sweating all day and working your butt off and not stop, when they can just sit at home and watch the money come in. And I think that's a dangerous thing to do in society for too long, because then how do you actually get the economy back going when people don't want to actually go back into jobs?
Mate, 100%. You hear people talk about the UBI and things like that. Oh, how good would a UBI be? And I sort of think, in theory, as a the JobKeeper was great for this period because it was a forced lockdown. These businesses didn't choose to shut and people didn't choose to stop patronising them. But you look at the UBI and you look at what's going on now, it's fine because it was really, as they said, unprecedented. Open the country up because UBI isn't going to work. People are just quite happy to sit at home and take the cash and go on. Like I said, play Xbox, do nothing. They're happy to do nothing, which is out of order. But it's human nature. If you can be lazy, you will.
Yes, and the government has created that situation for people. They've created that environment, and like you said, they forced businesses' hands to do this, and also when it comes to employees as well. So I think looking back at this, we're going to realise that the lockdown was worse than the virus. I think.
I think in 100 years' time, mate, people are going to be looking through the history books and they're going to be going, 2020, what the hell did these people do? What were they all about? But that's the world we live in, and that's what happens when you have dumpies for leaders, and that's what we tend to have in the Western world at the moment is pretty poor state of leadership. Speaking of which, you're running as a candidate in an election, mate. So tell us about the electorate you're running in and why you chose to run, other than the fact that the whole show is pretty well buggered.
Yes, well, yeah, that's a nice segue. So I'm running for the Clayfield electorate. So that's where I've spent most of my time when I've lived in Brisbane, working personal training around Hamilton. So that area of Clayfield is like the Clayfield electorate. The airport is the largest part actually of the electorate, including Hamilton, Ascot, Lutwyche, Hendra, and like Clayfield. So yeah, it's I'm very excited to enter the world of politics because I do think it needs a bit of a shake-up. I think cages need to be rattled, and I'm running as an independent, so I understand the challenges when it comes to the election. And you've got someone who you've got the current LNP who won pretty handily last time, and but I'm really trying to make as much noise as possible and get some accountability, because I think even if I'm not elected, if I get a high enough percentage, you have to pay some attention to that. And then it holds these guys accountable for the way that they're just moving so slow on things like such as legalizing cannabis, and they can actually see what the people want. Because if the people are voting, a higher than normal percentage for an independent who's just started, that I think that sends a pretty loud message to them to take a look at themselves.
100%, mate. People ask me all the time, why do you bother running in elections if you're not going to get elected? And it's like, I'm not there to get elected. I'm there to rattle cages and upset the apple cart and wake these people up that there is alternatives and there's different ways of thinking and there's different ways of going about things. So you touched on legalising cannabis, mate. I understand that's one of your key platforms. I actually hosted an event in Sydney about a year and a bit ago now with Pete Evans as a keynote guest speaker by the LDP. And we had
Another freedom chef.
Another freedom chef. I took the piss out of him a little bit, in a friendly way, and pointed out that I'm better looking than he is. Second chef, which anybody with any eyes and doesn't have a sight problem's probably going to disagree. But whatever. But yeah, look, we got him aboard and we did a little thing about legalising cannabis, and we had a really great doctor, and we had a fella from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance talking about the financial benefits. Why are you so committed to the legalisation of cannabis in Australia, mate?
Yeah, so it's for a few reasons. As I mentioned before, my background's in the military. So on an emotional and personal note, I've seen a lot of guys be able to change their lives with both CBD oil and THC. And, guys that have been addicted to opioids and then that's led them down alcoholism and an addiction to a lot of drugs. And their relationships and family has broken down because of it. And then they've only recently been able to sort of get their hands on some CBD oil or some THC. And now not just physical problems are alleviated, but a lot of their mental problems as well. They're able to separate themselves from the PTSD that they were dealing with. And along with, therapy, it's absolutely changed their lives. I've spoken to so many people in veterans groups, and I've got, tens to almost 100 testimonies of people who have had amazing experiences with this, and it's been able to actually rebuild their lives when a lot of them were on the brink of ending it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that on that side of the health side, it's just incredible. But the problem is there's so much red tape, because for every one person who gets to use it, I speak to other guys and their doctors have shut them down and said, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep you on these SSRIs or this drug or whatever. And, there could be financial reasons why that decision's made, but the red tape in itself, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, isn't having it approved for medicinal purposes enough? And it's not, because there's a lot of people who don't actually have a quote unquote condition, but they might be suffering anxiety or certain conditions that wouldn't allow them to access this plant. Yeah. And on top of that, just from a freedom perspective, people should be able to have this plant recreationally. It's if you compare it to alcohol, alcohol is responsible for a lot of aggression, people, the king hitting and stuff like that, and a lot of issues. That when was the last time you heard someone who was smoking some cannabis go out and hit someone? Most people don't want to get off the couch if they're having a good time. So it leads to deeper, great conversations. I think it's a much healthier social quote unquote drug, but let's call it a plant, because that's actually what it is. Yep. And so on the health side of things, I think that's why it has to be legalized, because everyone can, not everyone, but so many people would benefit dramatically from being able to have access to this. The next thing is the economy. I mean, right now we need jobs. We need as much action in the economy when we start opening things up to get people back on their feet. And if you look at the kind of jobs it can create, if you take a dispensary, you've got security at the front, you've got admin staff at reception taking down people's details as they come through. Then you've got people who are selling it and providing information, and doctors from within the inside of the dispensary. And that's just on the front end. Then you think of all the transport jobs, all the manufacturing jobs, all the quality control jobs. It would really be a massive boost.
Grow it and tend it, and that's the horticultural side. It's huge as well.
Absolutely.
I've never really participated. I don't use cannabis at all, but I see so many great value points for it that I think, well, why should a consenting adult not be able to go, I'd like to use X, whether it's cannabis or anything else for that matter? If you're a consenting adult who chooses to voluntarily use something, be it for medicinal reasons or recreational reasons, I think it's absolutely ludicrous that our government thinks it knows so well what people should and shouldn't do. And you know what? I mean, the complete cynic in me wouldn't be surprised if they were having cocaine parties in Parliament House when we weren't watching. It really wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Every now and then some politician gets caught out. And we all know that they're just humans like the rest of us. So it really annoys me that just humans think that they can tell us all how to live as free, beautiful adult humans in Australia. Mate, one of your other policy points, because we don't want to just talk about pot all day, although doing a live stream with an American guy that will be marijuana based in the morning. Whole other story. I'll share that with you afterwards. But what are your policy points, mate? Stamp duty on property. Yes. You're sort of fighting against that. I love that, because stamp duty, I don't care how they sell it, is a tax. Put forward, tell us why you think that should be abolished.
Well, I think it's a massive roadblock for most people to enter the property market, for example, because that's the biggest chunk that actually stops people getting a property. Is they look at that stamp duty and it pushes them out of being able to get into the marketplace. And so I think, home ownership, there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of investment properties, but there's not enough people who just have their own house, their own property. And it's kind of like sort of that quote unquote Australian dream to own your own property and, have your mates around for a barbecue and, you're not paying off someone else's mortgage. And I think having stamp duty there is such a big roadblock for people to actually get into their first property, especially now that, people are getting paid less and the job market isn't looking good. How are younger people going to get into the property market, when it comes to stamp duty? So, I mean, cannabis is a good segue into that, because the revenue generated from cannabis and the fees that are associated with, and if we tax it, apply GST to it, that can all be pushed into offsetting the abolishment of stamp duty.
Yep, 100%. And look, I have debates with people like you. Wear this hat out in public, mate. And you see how many interesting conversations you get to have with people. And people go, well, if there was none of this tax, so you want to relate, how would you replace that funding? And in a lot of cases, I don't think we need to replace it. We just need to cut spending. Our governments are obviously pissing money up against the wall at every opportunity. But I think you're right. We're looking at productive taxes. If I don't want any tax, but if I've got to have them, I can see it for things that I'm using or I'm doing. Something like a stamp duty is essentially the government going, hey, Rob, I'd like to buy your house. And you go, yeah, I'd like to sell it to you, Dean, no problem at all. This is the price. And the government goes, hang on. Well, before you two do any agreements between the two of you, we need a cut. And it's just not on. It's the old mafia game, and it's just out of order. It really is out of order. I think it'll be great. And you've got to start somewhere. There's over 125 different taxes levied against Australians annually. And the Australian Revenue Office can't name all 125 of them, but they do admit on their website that there's over 125 different versions of tax levied against Australians.
Incredible. They can't actually name them all. They're holding everyone accountable but themselves.
I did quite a lot of research into it, and by the end of it, my poor little head was spinning off my neck. It was unbelievable. Mate, also on your policy platform, lowering car rego. I'm suspecting that it's from a similar perspective to lowering stamp duty, but I can't imagine too many Australians would disagree with the idea of let's lower regos. What are your key arguments for lowering registrations for Australian drivers?
Well, it's just a ridiculous fee that doesn't, it's such a large fee. And, when you take into the fact that, a lot of people, they're paying that kind of rego and they're just getting around in, a $2,000 little, Hyundai or something like that. It's ridiculous to expect people to pay these crazy levies. And what do you actually get back from that? Like, what benefit do you get from rego? It's just a complete, waste of taxpayers' money. And I truly believe that if you put more money in people's pockets, they'll actually spend it wisely. And because who cares more about your money than you?
100%, mate.
Yeah. And
one argument I'm sure you'll get is, it goes to the roads. According to the Revenue website, I can tell you that no specific tax has to be, although it may be utilised for certain things. They don't actually specify in there. It's very clear. It's very clear how unclear it is that they may use certain taxes for certain things, but the word may in and of itself indicates that we'll do whatever we like, but we'll kind of let you think that we're using it for the roads. The reality is we won't. I've got a bit of a bugbear as far as the road issue goes. The luxury car tax.
Yeah.
It was originally brought in conjunction with all these taxes to protect our car manufacturing industry. I don't know about you, but I don't think we have one anymore. We let that die, yet we're still paying a luxury car tax to protect an industry that died.
Exactly. We moved everything overseas, and then we chuck on this luxury car tax. It's just another tax, and once again, if you looked at where it's spent, it's so it's so not clear. It's so clear that it's not clear. You said it perfectly. And it's just all these taxes and people go, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's going towards roads and hospitals and stuff. But if you look at the amount of tax, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's disproportionate to the actual investment that, the ROI that Australians actually see in the society. And it needs to be held more accountable.
There is, and the transparency should be far simpler. I mean, we don't need, in my ever so humble opinion, 125 different taxes to justify what we get. Let's just say I'm not really impressed with our return on investment at all. I look at it and think this is absolutely farcical. We have one of the highest rates of government employees per capita in the world. So for 26 million people, I think there's 2 point whatever it is million, government employees. And you see, Do we really need that many bureaucrats and people shuffling paper from one desk to another? I'm fairly confident we don't. The waste shocks me. And I suppose that's how we've ended up in this libertarian sphere where we kind of go, we'd like volunteerism, we'd like people to be more accountable for their own actions, their own safety, their own security, and how we're all going to operate. Mate, now with a lot of the stuff going on in your election, by the way, how's it actually going? What feedback are you getting so far before we get on to your next couple of policy topics? Because that's important.
It's going really well. We had an amazing day actually out at the front of the Cox Plate on Saturday. Had a large group of volunteers, and we were all waving the call flutes, and we got people stopping by just to chat with us. Funnily, a bunch of younger guys that were in a car, they actually gave us some beers, and they wouldn't leave until we took the beers from them. So it's I think it's a refreshing twist that I think people are really liking, that we're not we're not the same as Liberal, Labor, Greens, whoever, that we're really standing out. We've got a different energy about us. We're a little bit more edgy. We're a bit more courageous in what we're willing to say and the message we're willing to put out there, because we running as an independent, or if you're with the LDP, there's not that red tape around you either of what you can and can't say.
Mate, there's no other political party I could run for other than the LDP, because there's nobody who'd tolerate my nonsense.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, I just say what I say and I do what I do, and when I say to them, no, you do what you do, mate. That's why what we like about you. That's why we like to throw you at elections. If nothing else, you stand out by being real. And I think Australia's got a long way to go before they're going to outright embrace freedom and libertarianism. But I also think that with this COVID stuff, there's an awful lot more people looking for alternatives.
Yeah, people are waking up, because it's almost like people don't want to get off the hot plate until it's too hot. And, we've sort of been, it's just been warming up 1 degree at a time. Prior to now, like, just little things have been taken away, freedoms have been slowly eroded. But this year, it's kind of like they just turned it up to max, and people are really feeling the heat now. And they're like, okay, I actually really value my freedoms now, because I'm actually seeing them being taken away. And it's happening at a fast pace, and we're starting to get people mandate things that should not be mandated. I know you feel pretty strongly about not having vaccinations mandatory, and I feel the exact same way. Not to turn this into some kind of anti-vax talk, but to keep it on point. I don't want some politician mandating what you're going to put in my body. No, thank you very much. If I'm not allowed to choose to smoke marijuana, as an example, there's no way I'm allowing you to inject me with whatever the hell you think's appropriate. No chance. Yeah, to pierce the skin and to enter straight into the blood, and then straight to the blood-brain barrier. It's and we're talking about the fastest trials that have ever been done. So you can imagine the corners that are being cut to get that out, because it's just a financial race. And I can't believe Australia committed to purchasing all those those doses off AstraZeneca without even looking to see how their trials were going. They did it before there was even human trials taking place. So
it just shows just how off the planet our politicians are. And it also, in my opinion, it just shows how apathetic Australians have been. The government is that arrogant that they can think they can start mandating this stuff, and we're just going to do it with your taxpayer dollars. We're going to just start injecting you, and if you don't do it, well, you won't be allowed to travel, and you won't be allowed to do this, you won't be allowed to do that, and then we're back.
Yeah, so to say that you actually have a choice, but we're going to not allow you to work, we're not allowed you to travel, you're just going to have to live in your home by yourself and order Uber Eats, then it's...
Which we will also take from you when you can't go out and work to pay for it. Therefore, because you won't be eligible for welfare either, so you won't be able to pay your mortgage. So unless you're really good at internet businesses or something, essentially, we're going to lock you in your home until you're bankrupt, because you won't be able to leave your home unless you're willing to let us inject you with stuff. Yeah, not on my watch. I won't be standing for that in any way, shape, or form.
No way. And I always say I'm pro-choice when it comes to anything that enters your body. It's your body. You own it as a sovereign being, and no government, no organisation should be able to ever tell you what you can and can't do with it, as long as you're not causing harm to others in the process of whatever you're doing.
Mate, look, 100%, and that's, I suppose, where you see the face mask thing, and you go, you know, and people go, oh, well, you can't go out without a face mask, obviously. Really, if you're that concerned about it, wear a face mask, wear a face shield. I've seen people driving around in cars by themselves wearing face masks. I mean,
yeah,
the stupidity just, it's unfathomable, you know.
Well, sheep are conditioned. You know, it's like sheep weren't always sheep. They were conditioned to become sheep because they got rid of and killed all the ones that sort of left the pack, and the ones that were the most docile and fell in line, they kept breeding those, and that's how they developed. And I feel like the media in combination with the government are using fear as a tool to condition people to give up their freedoms because they're so scared. And, you know, wearing a mask in a car is such a clear example. Yeah. It's crazy.
It baffles me, mate. You know, do no harm, but then you see and think some of these people really should just sort of, you know, can we turn the machine off on some of them? It's really scary.
Yeah. And you know, it's the first time in history where we've actually quarantined healthy people. Like, you don't do that. You quarantine the sick and the people who are at most risk. So if we just focused all our energy on people at risk and like the aged care facilities and let the whole economy just keep running itself, you know, we could be in a very different place right now, in a much positive place. You know, there could even be less deaths, because if you think most of the deaths have been coming from aged care. So if we just focus more efforts on that, and you know, some states stop using fax machines, then, you know, we could probably be in a much better place.
Oh, mate, look, 100%. And you protect the innocent, you protect the vulnerable. But this is currently just nonsense, and it's so over the top. It does my poor little brain in. Mate, based on all these rules, regulations that are happening, and I'm up visiting, so I'm not in my usual studio. So based on all these rules, regulations, we've seen an awful lot of stuff go on legally. You know, yesterday or Saturday in Melbourne, they were flying drones around checking out people's backyards to ensure that people weren't having too many people in parties for grand final night and all sorts of crazy stuff, mate. And I know you're pretty passionate about police reform. I've done some videos about it before. What would you, or how do you want to tackle police reform relative to your campaign?
So for me, it's bringing the police back to their core principle of protect and serve, because right now they're not doing really either of those things. You know, they're going into nightclubs and they're telling people to sit down at their tables, or, you know, you can't dance, and you know, it's such a waste of resources. They're going out and arresting people for smoking a joint in their own home, you know, and it's just ridiculous that they've just become these administrators, these COVID Uber drivers, and I don't think they actually like doing it. I think the average policeman takes pride in the uniform. I believe the average policeman actually takes pride in their community. And so I'd like to see more community engagement with the police. I'd like to see with them building more relationships locally with people to build that trust. So when you see a police officer across the road, you don't quickly think, oh, am I doing something wrong? Are they about to arrest me? Even though you're just walking. And changing that relationship to where, you know, maybe you give them a wave, they give you a smile and a wave back. And you know that they're in that community and they're focusing on catching the real criminals, you know, and focusing on the victim-based crimes. And especially, I think a lot of police could be trained more so in the online world to prevent sex offenders against children. Because if we don't protect the children, we don't have a future. And I think that's of so much importance in today's day and age. You know, a lot of stuff has been coming out about child trafficking and things like that all around the world. And I think, you know, turning our attention and the police's focus towards protecting the innocent, that's just key for me.
Yeah, mate, I'm with you as well. I did a little video every now and then. When I've got to be in my bonnet about something, I'll just start ranting and raving to the camera just in case. Saves my family from having to digest it. But, you know, the other day, I don't know if you saw, but they found a sex trafficking ring, and there was a big thing up where young William Tyrrell was, and And I went, that's what the police are here for. I'm so proud of that group of police. And then on the other side, you've got them entering people's homes for posting about, protesting in Melbourne. So the guys protesting in Melbourne, this is bullshit and nonsense. The guys who are out here getting these absolute scumbags who are violating children, you guys are exactly what we need. This is what it's all designed for. Why can't we focus on that stuff, guys? Stop wasting money worrying about who posted on Facebook about the protest in Melbourne, because they all should be protesting in Melbourne, in my opinion.
Exactly. They're the real heroes. And I remember even when I was in the military and we had the Grantham floods, it was a joint effort between, military, police, emergency response workers. And it was amazing how much it brought people together. And so I'd like to see, that from this sort of pandemic, that maybe we can actually all come together from this, because at the moment there's a lot of division. And so I'd really like to bring that respect and that that honor back to that uniform. And I think a lot of police would actually agree with that themselves. So it's not about defunding them; it's about refocusing them.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I've got family, a lot of family that are police officers or former police officers, and I find it really hard when I have to criticise them as a group, because I've got that family connection. And so I don't want to criticise, but you're arresting people for Facebook posts, or your team, your gang, your club, whatever you want to call them, arresting people for Facebook posts. That's when the guys internally need to start standing up and saying, you know what, nah, not happening. After Nuremberg, as we know, they basically said, sorry, just saying I was doing my job doesn't cut it anymore. You need to be somewhat self-responsible, and that's what I'd like to see from more of our cops who go, this is nonsense, I'm not doing it. Stick your job up your bum, so to speak. And if there's enough of them who do it, they've got to wake up and go, okay, we're out of line and we're out of order.
Exactly, there's power in numbers. Look at the power of when teachers go on strike. Things change pretty quick. So I'm sure the men and women in blue could do the exact same thing.
Mate, God, I hope so. They've got an advantage. You've got tasers and guns, which our school teachers don't. So I'm pretty sure if they start saying, listen, this is what we need to have happen, this is out of order. But mate, we can only hope. I'm really passionate about seeing Australia be freer. And guys like yourself running for these sort of positions are imperative. I can't do it on my own, and neither can David Limbrick or Tim Quilty or Aaron Stonehouse or whoever. We need as many guys with this core freedom philosophy to step up and get in the ring. And most of us don't want to be politicians. We just want to do what's right for the country, and we want to get these lunatics out of our megalomaniacs who want to control us to, at the very least, stick to their doing what they're supposed to do, which is not very much. That's what your job is. Don't do very much. Like a referee in sport. They're a good referee if you don't know they're not involving themselves in the game.
Absolutely, the game just flows, and that's exactly how our country should be. It should just be flowing.
So how can people get behind you? Where can they find you? I know you've got a Facebook page, which I've linked to my Dean McRae Liberal Democrats New South Wales page. Mate, where can people find you? How can they support you? What can they do to help you in the upcoming election?
Yep, you can also find me on Instagram at Rob King for Queensland, and also on my website, robkingforqueensland.com. Is there somewhere I can share the link?
Mate, you send it through to me, and what will happen is my editor, she'll put it all up and she'll put it all out. This isn't live yet, so she'll do that this afternoon, and then we'll put it up. So if you message through the link and your email address, I'll also send all that to you, and we can put all your links in the description. It'll be great.
Perfect. Sounds good. I'll flick those through.
So, mate, anything you want to say to anyone who is watching that wants to support you in any way, shape, form? Queensland, Australia in general.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need a lot of people to voice their opinions, but for those who maybe not necessarily want to get in the limelight, they don't want to get at the thick of it, they don't want to sort of enter the world of politics. Just volunteering your time and being out there, even if you're just holding a sign or you're giving some flyers out, that goes such a long way in terms of sending the right message and building this movement, because it can't be done by any one person. Like you said, it has to be done by a collective. It has to be, and there has to be a collective that's waking up right now and going, okay, I never wanted to get into politics, but I see that there's a need for it. We've got to save this country, and that's priority number one. So it's kind of not it's not what you want. It's what you need, and it's born out of that, not a desire. So yeah, anyone who is in the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, to Brisbane area, if you reach out to me, I'd love to have you get around the campaign and volunteer, even if it's just an hour of your time, and you just want to come down, say hello, have a chat. It'd just be incredible, because that energy, when it starts to build, it starts to create changes and ripple effects. And this is it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take time for people to wake up and realize this, but it all starts with the ground roots movement. So yeah, let's make a difference.
Brilliant work, and I'm happy to have you on board. And as a fellow libertarian, I reckon it's great. The more of us, the merrier. And it's always good to see a few people putting their head above the parapet. It's not just a handful getting shot off. The more of us there are, the more we have a chance of affecting really positive, free, libertarian change. So, mate, thank you very much for your courage. Thank you for having a crack, because it's a big job running a campaign. I've done it. Mate, good luck with it. I hope to hear the good news that you're a man of the people and running the show up there. So, mate, have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dean. Really appreciate being on. You do keep doing the awesome work you're doing, because you're making a huge impact. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're getting there bit by bit, mate.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks so much, Dean. Thanks for having me on.
Beautiful.